Have a seat. Very good, very good, very good, very nice, very nice. So thank you. Thank you so much for actually making the time. Thank you for being a part of this particular program each and every Wednesday. You've made it a habit and a tradition, and I say thank you. We don't take it for granted that you have actually made this particular program your choice. I meet several of you all the time whenever I'm actually in these beautiful streets of Kigali and these parts of this particular country, and you tell me how much you love this program, and I appreciate you so much. If you're seeing this face for the first time, hearing this voice for the first time, I want to welcome you to this particular program, and as always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. We have people who are calling me Kanyarwanda. I embrace. Thank you. Welcome to the summit. Listen, this show is the most interactive program, and we are live across all platforms. Like you can see right now, this is the YouTube channel of RwandaTV. You can go over there and be able to leave your comment as we speak right now, and we'll be happy to read that particular feedback. If you're on the X platform, all you need to do is add the hashtag #TheSummitRW. And of course, once that particular hashtag is added on particular X post that you want to actually post, I'll be happy to come back and read it right here. And of course, this will be happening throughout the show. You can feel free to share your feedback. I see Veravose, who's actually a very great fan of the program and very happy to actually see us having this particular conversation tonight. Ndahiro Derek is actually on this show tonight, and he's very excited about it, of course, and he's looking forward to this very, very important conversation. And so I want you to be able to look through that particular hashtag, and we'll be happy to engage you on this particular conversation. Let me bring in our panelists who are joining us on this particular show tonight. You've seen them. If you've been on the social platforms, you've also been able to see who they are, but I want to take this particular opportunity to welcome them formally on this particular platform. Divine Awayo, lecturer and women's rights activist, not new on the platform. Thank you so much for making a comeback, and thank you for being here tonight.
It's an honor to be back, Eugene. Thank
Asante
you.
sana. Also with us is Ndahiro Derek. He's a gender equality and open knowledge advocate. Thank you for making time.
The pleasure.
What does open knowledge mean, by the way?
Open knowledge means the kind of information that is put out there that can be reused by every person and easily accessed.
Okay.
In simple words.
Interesting. We'll be able to talk a bit about that, particularly for this topic we have tonight. Angela Iriwagiza, who's actually a visual artist and a women's rights advocate. Thank you for making time.
I'm honored.
I'm happy to understand how you use visual art to actually interlink the women rights advocacy work. How do you do that, first of all?
I use art to try to communicate a message. Art is a powerful tool to get out messages that words cannot. So I use art in my advocacy.
In your advocacy.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Tonight on the program, we are talking about 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And of course, our conversation tonight is on how do we move from words to action. It's been 30 years. If someone was born in the year 1995, actually, we have people who are actually staring at 30. This is a shocker for them. It's been 30 years since that Beijing declaration. And I want us to understand, when we talk about activism against gender-based violence, how do we move from what some people have called, just slogans to action? And I want to start off with Divine, especially from where you sit. You're just fresh from the city under the sun, as most call it that. That is Nairobi. And in Kenya, there have been protests. I think it could be yesterday, which were actually being done by activists who were actually protesting against femicide in line with this 16 days against citizen activism against gender-based violence. And I want to read your mind, even as we close those, that period of marking this 16 days. Do you feel that there's been enough action towards rolling back the numbers of GBV?
Thank you very much, Eugene. Talking about the Beijing 30, for maybe the context to the public who are not aware, as the international conference, actually the biggest, happened in 1995 to call for governments all over the world to recommit to fight against ending violence against women. So now for Beijing 30, which is going to be next year, we are now reconvening and reminding ourselves the commitments that we have made as the international scene to fight against the violence against women. So what happened in Nairobi yesterday is a reminder that my apologies to say that the government is specifically for Kenya is not doing enough, because it was International Human Rights Day, first of all, and the women came together to actually protest, to remind the government that it is their responsibility to be protecting the women there, and to end the 16 days of activism, because femicide is part of gender-based violence. But unfortunately, they managed to still attack them while they're protesting against attacks, which is very sad. But particularly if we talk about the situation here in Rwanda, I believe that the government has done better when it comes to policies and legislation around gender-based violence. We have the laws, but I believe we can still do better, because we still have cases, and when we look at the prevalence of gender-based violence between women and men, the statistics are undisputable. It's obvious that when it comes to women, it's big and it increases day by day. If you look at the UN Women, and this is not necessarily about Rwanda only, if you look at the UN Women stats, it shows that every 10 minutes one woman dies. And I believe that we can do better. We can put more efforts into ending violence against women, and maybe we shall come to talk about the statistics, as you said, because they need
there's need to actually see how to roll back these numbers. Derek, I'll bring you on this conversation. And a lot of time when you're talking about activism against GBV, the female voice has been louder. And most of the times I feel like there's been a misconception on where the role of the man is. And in most cases, sometimes we've also had some men feeling victimized along the way and left out in the conversation when it comes to GBV. They always feel like when we talk about gender-based violence, we seem to be just pointing to women. What about the man? And I want to read your thoughts on this, even as we talk about the 16 days of activism against GBV. I'd like to read your thoughts as a man on this panel tonight. Where does the man, the male figure, sit in this conversation?
Thank you so much. I think I'll begin with appreciating the fact that we also have me as a male in this kind of conversation.
Yes.
Because I think the fundamental reason is that this issue not only concerns women, but every kind of human being. And when I'm talking about that, men are also included. Why have men been left out? I think the first reason would be men distancing themselves from this kind of conversation, because I'm just thinking of a person, a male, who has been, inflicting GBV to their spouse for 30, 20 years, bringing them to a conversation where they feel like they will be held accountable. The majority are going to really run away from that kind of a conversation. There is also another group of people I feel also feel like this kind of conversation takes away the privileges that we've been given by our societies. And the majority of those privileges are given to us and at the cost of women. So I think that's the first thing, the first reason why I feel like men have been left out, not left out intentionally, but choosing to distance themselves from this kind of conversation. And another reason I think would be also some women who feel like this is a women's issue. Therefore, since the majority of the perpetrators are men, therefore we shouldn't be on the same table discussing about these issues, of which I feel is a misconception. Because if you're talking about GBV, we are looking at the statistics where the statistics globally show that 1 out of 3 women faces in her entire life, she faces at least all forms of GBV. Now, but that doesn't take away the fact that men also are experiencing GBV.
Correct.
So taking away, pushing men away from this kind of conversation, I feel like it is not something that should be done.
Yeah.
It is not something that should be advocated for. I feel like men, just because they are perpetrators, because they're also victims, because they're also members of this society that we live in, they should be put on the forefront, so that as we are fighting for this social issue, I also find it as a social issue. Men should also be engaged in these kind of conversations, but they've been left out, sometimes intentionally, because women feel like, how do I even open up about this issue?
To the perpetrator.
To the perpetrator. But mind you, not every person, not every man is a perpetrator. Some of them are victims. Some of them are just seeing it, you know, they feel like, actually it's not even GBV. Sometimes people do it out of ignorance. So I feel like men should be brought to these kind of conversations so that we hear from them. And again, it also acts as a way of, you know, bringing in the aspect of role modeling, because you have men who have never done GBV in their entire life. So if you bring them to this kind of conversation,
good practice,
they are able to, you know, inspire other men. You know what, you don't need to carry out GBV to be a man. Even though some of our cultural norms, you know, tell us, you know what, for you to be a man, you should, you know, exercise your power over someone else. So I feel like men have been left out because of those reasons. But again, it's high time we bring men to this kind of conversation.
Correct. We'll come back to that. I want to bring in Angela, especially on how you incorporate, you know, arts in the work that you do. But I want to also read your thoughts. You know, it takes courage, it takes confidence to say, look, I'm going to take this career path of using these artistic skills, but not just to entertain people, but to pass on a very serious message that took, you know, over 100 nations to actually ratify and say we have all signed up to this particular declaration that we want an empowered womenfolk that is actually not discriminated at all. Talk to me a bit about how that has been for you, using visual arts to actually pass the message on activism, you know, against GBV. I just want to understand, maybe for perspective purposes.
Thank you. To start, I would say I'm gifted artistically, but as a young child, I never thought I would have a career in art, because my parents did not support me in doing art. They thought, like many parents, that art cannot provide income and such. So I studied. I took another path in studies, but when I graduated, I met a fellow colleague we had met in high school. She introduced me to art, and that's how I went back to art, but not really thinking it as a career, just as a hobby. So I started doing art, making wedding gifts for my friends and such. So the activism began in 2021. I lost an acquaintance. She was murdered by her husband. So I decided to use art to talk about her and honor her and to raise awareness about that kind of violence. In my life, I never thought that I would enter into activism. I'm horribly introverted, so I would say it was like an accident, but so far it has been eye-opening. Since the acquaintance was murdered, I saw myself in her. I knew her personally. I knew she was smart, she was privileged. So recognizing all those privileges she had, but she couldn't get out of an abusive marriage, I asked myself, what happens to the women in the villages who have no access to information, no resources, nothing? So that's how I started my activism on violence against women. So I use art in my activism because I realize art is a powerful tool to raise awareness, to inform people and share knowledge. So I use art as a way to communicate my message and raise awareness and do my part in trying to contribute in the end on violence against women.
Do you feel heard enough through the work that you do? Do you feel the activism is being hard enough to a point where you're feeling, I think there's a piece of art I did, and I can put my finger to some impact on the impact that it has brought. Talk to me a bit about that.
It's definitely working. As I was in 2021, when she was murdered, I was working on an art piece, an artwork bearing names of women who had been murdered. I did research, collected the names, and made an artwork that I named Tubavuga Amazina. And when I displayed it in an exhibition, people thought it was a shout out. The names, they thought it was a shout out to my friends or colleagues. So when I explained the message behind it, people were shocked to see all those names, and they were curious to know more.
Yeah.
It was the beginning. I also didn't know much about it, but ever since then, the people have been learning and contacting me and trying to understand the violence against women.
Yeah.
So I would say it has been impactful.
It's
really.
been impactful.
Yeah.
Let me come back to Devin, especially when we're talking about some of the reasons why we still hear cases of GBV. I know she mentioned, the acquaintance who was in an abusive relationship that cost her life in that sense. And I know of some societal perceptions when we see that numbers of divorce cases are on the rise. We raise questions. These people are just marrying each other for money or for other reasons. But sometimes maybe someone is moving out of an abusive relationship. And we never think about it from that perspective. And then that now causes certain people to want to stay in a relationship so that they don't become a statistic of a failed marriage. Let's talk a bit about that, Devin, especially on how it contributes or continues to contribute to domestic-related GBV and how we can stop this.
Thank you very much. I'll come back to what Derek said earlier about our societal norms and perception around male dominance. I like to call it patriarchy as any other one. So when it comes to patriarchy system, especially marriage, it's something that our society has idolized, which I do not hate. Love is a beautiful thing. But we would rather be statistics of divorces than statistics of intimate partner violence when it gets to murder. I like to tell people not everyone was meant to be married, not because it's a joke or not, but I really don't see a reason to why people should stay in marriages that will end into death. It should be such a normalized concept that sometimes things work, sometimes things do not work. And as a society, we should learn to accept that, to actually give women grace. I've seen the other, a few days ago, not a few days ago, a few months ago, there was a whole Twitter discussion around a daughter of Museveni who got out of a marriage, and someone was praising them to actually leave the marriage, and they got a very big backlash for it. But as a society, we have already failed women to the extent that they would feel, let me die here instead of being outside and being seen as a failure. But to me, that's a win, to actually take a step and recognize that this is not what is good for me, and getting out of that, to me, is a win. And people should start celebrating women for actually getting out of marriages that are abusive if things are not working. And most of the times they do it for the kids, but I actually don't think it's good for the kids, because if you look at research, the kids who grew up in abusive relationships ends up being abusive as well. They end up practicing abuse because that's what they grow up seeing. So we are nurturing the kids to actually be abusive people, parents and partners. So as a society, it is now our homework to turn back and see where we have failed and actually start celebrating women for taking steps like those and actually quitting those marriages, because it is doing more harm than the good it is doing.
Right.
Yes.
Derek, talk to me a bit about this from a man's perspective as well. Maybe, you know, some have argued that marriages are not, it's not a bed of roses. I've always argued contrary. I've always said maybe mine could be the different one. Yeah. Not all marriages have to be not a bed of roses. We can make them better. But this is what we've had from time immemorial. Our parents will tell you, their grandfathers will tell you, even me, you see this grandmother of yours, we were never always in good terms, but we still persevered and managed to live through all those particular. And actually, the more you have problems that you're solving, the stronger the bond. You know, and there's a young man who's growing, looking for Musheri right now, and he's seeing this is what marriage is supposed to be like. How do we change this? How do we make sure that, you know, it is normal for you to say, look, my daughter, your bedroom in this house is still your bedroom. That if it doesn't work out there, you see that bed there that you've been using, it's still there, it's still your bedroom. How do we normalize this and make it easier for our daughters, for our sons, when they feel it's not working? They just walk out and it is okay as a society, because it doesn't seem so today.
Thank you so much, Eugene. I think I would like to begin with saying the best way to deal with this is the parents and the grandparents telling the truth to their young kids. Especially in Africa, you realize that truth is sometimes uttered out only if it's beneficial. If it's not beneficial to the person who is uttering it out, they will keep it away from you. So you realize that people have been in marriage, let's say, 60 years. Amazing. To a young person, if you say people have been married for 60 years, I think like that's amazing. But how long do we hear people who have been in marriage for 60 years telling the young people who are not yet married the truth and the reality within those 60 years? In most cases, as you say, they will say it's a bed of roses. But honestly, has it been like that? Some of us grew up in abusive families. But you won't be shocked on Sunday, you see an abusive uncle holding his wife in church, and they're like, here is my darling wife. 15 years down the road, we've never even quarreled. But last night, it was a fight. So I think the first thing parents need to do is being honest with their kids. Telling them the truth of really what happens behind curtains. That's the first thing. The second thing is really, again, it also has to do with telling the kids the truth. Also telling them that even if it reaches a point and it's not working out, you're still my son. Come back home. There are some tweets that I usually see from a person who I think their account is Dear Son, where they're advising boys that if it fails, you're not supposed to die in that house. Come back, because no matter how old you are, you're always my son. So I think parents need to tell their kids the truth that if it fails, you still have a home. Because, as she said, we would rather have so many young boys, couples, men and women, going back to their homes than dying in their newly built families. It would be better. It would be better for us to have a country that is made up of people who are trying to, after a failed marriage, maybe to see if something else can work out, than having a big number of people, of widows, because of domestic violence. So, and I think another thing that needs to be done is, creating awareness. We have so many widows there and widowers of GBV. So how about coming out and we tell people what really happens within those houses? And lastly would be...
about confessions, kind of?
Yes.
Where people just speak about...
Speaking out, because sometimes if I sit here and I talk about someone else, something I read in a report by the, let's say, by the Ministry of Gender, people will be like, okay, these are things people read. But how about we have some people who are able to do that, bold enough to tell us what really happened. I think, and then lastly, the other thing I would suggest is, having these conversations endlessly. Because the more we have these conversations, the more even people who have decided to give an, a blind eye to these conversations, the more, it becomes irritating, but they're getting the message. So I think we need to keep having these conversations more and more, so that people really understand that. And I think another thing that I would even add there is, people need to redefine marriages on a personal basis. A person will tell you, you know what, by the time you're 25 and you're not married, you've lost it in life. That's how they define marriage. To them, 25 years of age means
I need
marriage.
to have a in my home.
I think we need to bring it back down to our personal level. Me as Derek, as Divine, what is marriage to her? How does she want marriage to look like? Before we start, engaging in marriage on other people's definitions. Because at the end of the day, if my grandparent, as you were saying, if they were told, no matter what happens in marriage, you're supposed to be there. You're not supposed to divorce. I think sometimes they even say, back then divorce was not even a thing. But if that's how they defined marriage, going there, no matter what happens, you stay there, you produce kids, and that's it. Is it the same kind of definition that I want my marriage to be? Where someone comes in and it feels like they're confined somewhere where they cannot go out. So we really need to work on the definitions of marriage.
I like that. Angela, I want us now to talk solutions. I know we know where the gaps are, or, for lack of a better word, we've seen some areas where we feel, I think people in authority, which I also believe we have as citizens, can be able to play a role in making sure that when we are talking about 16 days of activism against GBV, it's not just an event that we're all looking forward to, like Christmas. That it's finally here. Let's put banners, let's have campaigns, and then once it's 10th, we roll back our banners and put them back in the store and wait for the next year. What are the gaps? What if someone is watching us tonight and has been trying to work out a solution to make sure that this is not just slogans, it's not just words, we want to move now to actions, what message would you want to give them tonight from where you sit and say, look, if we did this and this and this, I think we'll roll back these numbers big time. I know he has talked about awareness creation and redefining marriage. What is your thought in terms of solutions?
In terms of solutions, I would say it starts with the individual, the person, to acknowledge that, well, not all of us are perpetrators of violence, but I would say we all benefit, mainly this is on the side of the men. We tend to say men are violent, abusive, and there's people who argue that not all men. Yes, we know that. We have fathers, we have brothers, we have relatives who are not violent. But the men who are not violent, they also benefit from the violence of the men who are violent. So it needs to start from an individual level.
Explain that part first. Maybe someone has missed that.
So we need men, I'm addressing men now, they need to confront the attitudes they have towards women, the misogyny, the derogatory attitudes they have about women in terms of also gender roles, expecting women's labor, love, bodies, access to their bodies and such. They need to lose that entitlement first and acknowledge that even if you're not violent, what's your part in contributing towards ending violence? Do you confront your abusive colleagues? Do you confront your colleagues when they're telling rape jokes? Do you practice bystander intervention when a man is harassing a woman? What do you do? Do you say anything? Do you do anything? So first, we need to start on an individual level. There's also acknowledging that there's something wrong in our society, and we have all contributed to it. There's violence in our society. We see it in our families, in schools, at work, everywhere. But what do? We are everyone is responsible.
Guilty as charged.
Yes. Everyone is responsible for the perpetration of the violence we see all around us. So there's need to also acknowledge that there's violence and the part we play in allowing it to continue. We need to check ourselves on an individual level and on a societal level. Yeah. And also, things have been said. The campaigns have been run, raising awareness campaigns. The government has done commendable efforts, but still I say we need to, the biggest part that I focus on is on the individual and the societal level. We need to play our part. Yeah. Yes, there's more that needs to be done, but we need also to play our part to build on the efforts of the government.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm going to come back to you, Devine and Derek, but I want to also bring in our viewer who's actually watching us tonight. Like I said when we were starting this very conversation, it is very interactive. All you need to do is just get onto our social platforms. If you are live on X and you're checking us out, it's right there on your screen. The hashtag to use always is the Summit RW. I'm happy to actually just tap on that particular hashtag and read the feedback and comments that you're actually sending right away. And of course, also, if you are watching us live on YouTube as we speak right now, please also feel free to leave a chat message on the comment section or the chat interactive section. I'm happy to also read your comment. Muhire Simon on X, it's at Simon Muhire 2. He says, I see how there is a silence on GBV towards people with disabilities. Even these called activists, they aren't raising that concern. We have to, people with disability, for them to fight against any violence targeting them from the surrounding. Let's join hands to defend the people with disabilities. This is a concern that I think is very, very super valid. And maybe, Devine, maybe from where you sit, how do we make this activism as inclusive as possible so that we are not leaving anyone behind, even as we talk about this serious challenge of gender-based violence?
Yes, thank you. I will respond to that in two points of views. As a feminist and other feminists, we make sure we leave no one behind. And when we talk about women, we are talking about women in all their inclusivity. We are talking about vulnerable women, we're talking about privileged women, we're talking about women who are living with disabilities. Now, when we legally speaking, our laws are inclusive. It's the law, the Constitution is non-discriminatory. It is equality before the law for everyone. So now, that's where we step in with statistics as we started, because now we're looking into moving from slogans to now action.
Yes.
When it comes to statistics of gender-based violence, usually you'll see that it's not, for example, when we talk about intimate partner violence, we talk about these murders that are gendered, because that's something we also need to open a conversation as a society, because when you look at the way women are killed and the way men are killed, the prevalence is quite different. And because there is no statistics on that, our laws, our legislation around that classifies that as homicide. But we also need to have an open conversation to the extent where we have disaggregated statistics to say, okay, these are the murders, but which ones are related to intimate partner violence? Which ones, how many numbers of people living with disabilities do we have? For us to be able to address the issue here is, and to actually name it for what it is that we open a conversation around that, and we work on our statistics. The numbers don't lie. The numbers that are there, it's undisputable, but the moment we don't want to have a conversation around that and to actually work on the numbers and disaggregate them and be able to know these are the cases of homicide that we have. These ones were contributed by gender-based violence. These are the numbers of women in rural areas, because now when we get to the rural part of the country, it's even worse with the cultural and societal norms. And these are the women that we have living in the city. These are the women, educated women. These are uneducated women. These are women living with disabilities. Then that's how we start addressing the issue at hand. But the more we generalize it and we take it as a more social issue instead of political, is how we are escaping from the problem.
Right.
We need to actually call it what it is for us to be able to address it.
Right. Interesting. I'm going to come to both of you. I'm sure you might want to jump on that, but I want to bring in another viewer who says, this is Shadrach Dusave, who says, men have not been left out of the conversation when it comes to GBV, but instead the greater attention to women comes from the incomparable trend. It is high time that we men wear the protector shoes and tear up oppressors' hearts. Let us all be just humans. And maybe I want to read your thoughts on this. I'm going to bring that particular comment later on from Mwene Munana.
Protector from who?
Mukanya Gatoya. And this particular question or comment from Shadrach brings me to the issue where we are talking about generalization. Some men in some quarters have felt, I am not a perpetrator. I don't abuse my wife. I don't abuse anyone. But we seem to also have been generalized, especially coming to what we've seen across social media platforms. We know the terminology, men are trash.
Yeah.
How does that help or not help in reducing the numbers of GBV?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I think it's one of the conversations that are dear to me nowadays. I think one of the issues as we are, putting in various efforts to, tackle this issue, GBV, I'm also coming to think that there are also some people with hidden agendas, people who are just misandrists, people who despise men by different reasons, also hiding under this movement that is aimed at creating a society that is free from violence. You have someone who despises men for their own reasons coming up and as we are talking about creating a safer environment for everyone. Actually, this person, you would realize from their conversation, it's as if we wipe men out of this society for it to be free according to what they think. So I think we really need to be honest with ourselves. Again, we also need to be, I would say, harsh as we are to this vice, because it is a serious issue and we are supposed to be harsh as we deal with GBV. We also need, again, to do away with people with hidden agendas. Because even by the virtue of us being here, there are people who would really do whatever it takes for a man to be out of this conversation. So the question is this person advocating for the removal of men from this conversation because they have genuine reasons or because they have their hidden agenda? I think, first of all, we need to really identify people with hidden agendas and we do away with them. The second group are men, now misogynists, people who hate women for their various reasons that shouldn't even make sense. Who are also feeling like, if based on the efforts that are being put in, this, let me call it a game, it might come, this fight might come to an end where we have a free, a violence-free society. In most cases, as she said, it benefits men in most cases. So you have men joining these conversations not to really contribute effectively towards the goal, but I would say to put everything down, to disrupt everything.
Sabotage. Yes,
to sabotage the good ambitions of this kind of movement. So I feel like as we go into this kind of conversation, we need to bring men on board.
Well, they can come on the table. They don't need to be invited.
Yes.
They just bring themselves on the table.
Yes, because, and as I say that, let's also look at why are men trash? How does a man become, trash? She talked about patriarchy. Who are the people, facilitating patriarchy to be what it is today? Men are also included. Our mothers. I fall down, she tells me, you know what, you're not supposed to cry. I do something crazy, she tells me, you know what, you're a boy. Boys are not supposed to do that. If it was your sister, it would make sense. So, it starts from a young age, and then before you know it, a 25-year-old man thinks being a man means, you know, sitting on the head of a woman. So I think we really need to bring it down to back to our families.
Yeah.
How are we doing it? Aren't we saying one thing in the public and then doing something else in our homes?
Right, right.
Another good example, maybe I can add on that, the women in positions where they can really do more, are they really doing more?
Are they?
Are they?
No, that's the question I'm asking you as well. From where you say,
Some
are, they?
are,
Yeah.
others are not. For instance, some are even, you know, playing a role in the GBV of their fellow marginalized women. A good example, I was in one of the hotels in the Eastern Province. I was privileged to have some of the waiters coming because we were having a discussion around GBV. She comes to me, she tells me, you know what, it's very funny that some of the people facilitating GBV are women, our women bosses. Because a man will come, because she has seen you, you're a waiter, you're very beautiful, he wants to sleep with you, but because maybe he thinks he has values, he will not come straight to the waiter, he passes through the boss, who is a female.
woman, yes.
Now, the woman is the one telling this young woman, this young girl, you know what, you have to go and serve him, or you leave this kind of a job. So I think as we are also doing this, we need to hold every person accountable. Because by the time we say men are the only perpetrators, then how about women who are not only doing it to their fellow men, husbands and brothers, but, you know, doing it to their fellow women. So I think we really need to be honest, and as she said, we need to bring it to our personal, you know, to the personal level. And me as Derek, what am I doing?
Yeah, I hear you, Derek, I hear you. And I know, Divine, you want to come in, but let me bring in Angela first of all, because you said we are all guilty as charged. We have all contributed in one way or another. And I want to come back to the issue where we have some decent men and decent women who are actually anti-GBV in whichever form it is. And I want to ask you the same question I asked him, especially when such statements come up. Is it that it's a misunderstanding? We don't mean that all of you are trash, or is it that it is actually aimed at ensuring that we really deal with this particular issue of GBV? I want to understand this, because if we need to do this as a concerted effort, how do such statements either contribute to achieving the end goal of reducing GBV, or how do such statements contribute to its escalation? I just want to hear from you, because you mentioned we are all guilty as charged.
Such statements are meant for the collective, not the individual. If an individual feels targeted, then there's a problem. It's as a collective, saying men are trash, they are not really trash, but as a collective, due to the violence they inflict on women, the term was coined to have men question themselves, confront their beliefs as a collective, not on an individual level. Any individual who feels targeted by the men are trash, then there's a problem.
There's a problem.
Yeah.
Divine, I mean, because we want as many allies in this. If we are all scattering and pulling from different directions, then again we don't achieve the goal. But how do such statements help in either bringing us together or putting us more apart?
Yes, when it comes to the men are trash hashtag, it's usually very controversial, but I think as a society we have lost focus on what it is actually meant to be. I was very saddened when the 16 days of activism started, and instead of focusing on actually creating awareness on how to end violence against women, the whole conversation circled around back the men are trash slogan, and people were very angry at feminists and all that. But I think we have lost focus on what it actually means to the feminists, to the women who are actually bringing that to the table, because now it's like you are being angry for someone for being angry. I am not justifying anything here, but now, instead of validating the anger, what causes someone to be angry? And if you look back to why the women are angry, you'll find out women are being chased out their homes, they are killed every other day, they are financially left out, economically left out in their own homes, the women have all the validity in the world to be angry. So now, instead of focusing on what makes them angry, we are now focusing on their anger. So personally, the men are trash as slogan is not necessarily saying all men are doing this. But now, what it means to me is, Eugene, your brother did this and this. You had the power to hold him accountable, you did not. Derek had the power to hold the men who are actually involved in this.
Yeah.
He did not confront them. So now the women are here shouting alone, men are not shouting. And they actually have the power to confront others. So you might not be actually involved in perpetrating gender-based violence, but you're actually not doing anything to confront the people involved. So it's not men are trash because everyone is doing that. But if you ask, Eugene, if you actually, I am telling you, go outside now, talk to 10 women, it's almost 10 p.m.
Yeah.
They will tell you, I cannot pass through that street. And why? Because a man will hurt me. I used to live to a place where I could not go for a jog because I know at some point I'll meet someone, that person is not a woman, it's a man, they will hurt me.
But this is the safest city, safest country. Numbers
exactly,
don't lie.
now you can understand. Yeah. If I know, I'm not saying Kigali is not safe, of course it's safe, but if you talk to Kigali women, they will, one in 10 will tell you that they have
safe. Yeah.
They don't feel safe around the men. So now, this is not a problem of all men doing this, but it's actually the issue of now most men doing this, and the ones who are not doing it are not confronting the others. So now, instead of being angry at the anger of women who are actually have more reasons to be angry, how about we go for the reasons they're angry?
They're angry. You seem to want to jump in.
Yes. Yes, actually, to some extent, I disagree with that because the people using this hashtag are educated people. They speak good English. They write good English. There is a clear definition. I mean, distinction between men are trash and some men are trash. So I think that's why I was saying we need again to be careful.
So you advocate for, let's just drop this whole hashtag.
Because I don't
we'll
believe
come on
in,
the table and talk about solutions. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, that's the first thing I'm advocating for. The second thing, if from what you've said, if we are targeting men, bystanders, men who see it happening and they're quiet, and men doing it, those two categories of men are not like the only categories where men fall in. There are men like me, like Eugene, who is linked in
and
this
we
conversation.
appreciate
Therefore, let's have
being on the table.
The hashtag changing.
To some
Instead
men
of saying
trash.
some men are trash, because by the time we say men are trash, by the virtue, before we even add
Even
on
the
other
allies
definitions,
feel targeted.
Yes, so I think we really need to be, first of all, to be, you're saying being harsh. I agree with being harsh, because it is really serious. When you go down to the villages and you see 13-year-old girls pregnant, it really hits you serious. And you get here that a person who impregnated her, who defiled her, this guy...
Walking free.
He's walking free, and he tells people, you know what, actually the best thing is doing whatever he did. It really also hits me. But I also feel, and I also disagree with her, saying that if I feel attacked as a person, there is a problem. Yes, there is a problem. I'm not attacked, I'm not feeling attacked because I represent all men. But I think we need to do away with generalization, because today we are talking about men being the majority of the perpetrators. What happens tomorrow if you have women as the majority? Should we also use the same hashtag, women are trash? I don't believe that that is the better way to go. I feel like...
that two wrongs don't make a right.
But that's a hypothetical assumption. We know that women are the victims here. And
I agree with
I
you
know
100%.
Derek, I know you. You don't feel attacked when we say men are trash because you are not. And thank you. We appreciate you for being here in the conversation with us. But then, that's a few of you.
So he says you actually really don't know. He smiles at you, but deep down he's hurting.
Yeah, I feel like we can do better than that.
Yeah.
Men are not trash.
Yeah, men are not trash. I want us to start taking our final comments because we're already at 51. And I have Mwene Munana on X. And I'd like us to just project that particular comment, which is actually saying, wow, this conversation is so amazing. And I think, and it says, and it's so inspiring to the young people who play a crucial role in the fighting against GBV. 16 days of activism should be a commencement of actions instead of keep saying and using the tags without acting, and it must be everyone's action. It is concerning all of us. We need to actually act on these particular issues, and this is very, very significant feedback coming over there. I have Ilaria Buscaglia. I think this is a very good one. The summit, please, enough with focusing on men are trash. It's like focusing on white fragility in a discussion on racism. This is her feedback. This is her comment. Yeah. And I want us to be able to be able to. But Ilaria, I also want to hear your thoughts. What is the solution? How do we ensure that we move away from slogans and move to actions on ground? I would love to hear solutions because on this particular platform, it's more of solutions-focused discussions. I'm happy to read your comments on that. But I'm going to start with you as we take our closing remarks because I'm being told we need to start giving room for news. Chambirina Makuru, that's what we always say here. But tell me, where do we go from here? We've talked. Every year we'll still have this particular 16 days of activism against GBV. It will come. But then how do we ensure that that person who's been watching us tonight has been a victim of GBV and he feels this is just another talk shop. We're just talking. There's no action. How do you convince them that, look, we have solutions and this is what we're going to do moving forward?
I would like to start commenting on his what he's just said. On the men are trash. Yes, we know it's not all men, but it's enough men to make women uncomfortable, afraid, and whatnot. You see, before even coming here, I asked you to, if it's possible, to come with someone because it's at night, and there's always a threat of violence when it comes to women. We cannot argue on that. It's not all men, yes, we know that, but it's enough men to make us afraid and angry and whatnot. And we cannot, in a room of 10 men, I cannot tell who is violent and who is not. So it's a collective issue. And on the solutions, I would say, yes, many things have been said, but I have hope that things are changing, and I would tell the public to take what many things have been said over the years. It's been 30 years of the Beijing, whatever, and I would like to say that we need to stand in action. We need to practice what we've been told over and over again. Listen to victims, believe survivors, practice bystander intervention. Do not let rape jokes slide just like that. So for any victim or survivor listening to me, I don't have a particular message to them, but to the general public, we need to stand up and act. It's possible. Each one of us has what they can contribute to this fight in all levels, any age, in all our diversities.
We have a role and we can play.
We have a role to play, and we have to assume the role and stand in.
We have 1 more minute, and I'd like you to share the 30 seconds together. Just let's go.
Thank you so much. I think my recommendation to everyone, we've heard what the government of Rwanda is doing, what UN Women is doing, what different NGOs are doing. But now we should point our, the remaining fingers to ourselves. What am I doing as an individual to stop GBV? that includes also speaking out.
Yeah.
If you know someone who has experienced it,
Yeah.
or if you've experienced it, and also this goes to men
Yeah.
who choose to keep quiet because they want to remain men.
Yeah.
That makes you an abused man.
Yeah.
So we need to speak out.
Yeah. This woman that you talked about in that restaurant, is there any action you took to report her or something?
The first thing I did was actually connecting her to the police, DPC, I think the district police.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
This is a collective action. This goes towards the government to recommit again towards the Beijing 30 commitments, and the public as well, and to come back as a society and think on ways where we keep on working on not to fail women.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. George, thank you. He says, still same problem, patriarchal society. Most Rwandan men are macho. I don't know what you meant by that. This is what he said. Thank you very much. And I think we cannot have this conversation done in 1 hour. It's the shortest 1 hour ever. We only try to make sure that we are conversation starters right here on the summit. But the conversation continues amongst ourselves, in our homes, with our colleagues, with our friends, on our social platforms. Keep talking. Let's keep talking. And the hashtag to always use is the Summit RW. Ask yourself these very hard questions. What are we doing? What am I doing to be able to roll back these numbers of GBV? Because it concerns you and it concerns all of us as a society. And so I'll leave it at that point, and we'll see you again next time, same place. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe Kanyarwanda. Thank you for being part of the show. Let's go. Thank you very much.